Now, here's what's going to happen when you start asking these questions. You're going to irritate your child. They're not going to like it. They're going to roll their eyes. Some kids go, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, no. And they try to do it real fast. You just slow down and you get the information. Like you write down, test Friday wants to make a B. Homework today. All homework turned in. You did it for each class so it's written down so you have a little record. It doesn't have to be extensive. And actually, if a child cooperates, all this occurs in like 5 minutes. If it takes more than 5 minutes, they're not cooperating. But guess what you've just done? You have been successful in evoking the real problem. If they roll their eyes and become disdainful, or if they start saying, I don't know, or if they start being irritated, or they get mad and stomp off, you have just evoked the problem. That's fine. If they get mad and walk off, 5 minutes later, bring them back and get the questions going again. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes 4, for the kids to adjust to this technique. Now, if they adjust quickly, good. But expect that once you install any of the techniques I'm talking about, you do it for the next 2 or 3 years. Just put that in your mind. You may not have to do it for 2 or 3 years, but we're working for the long haul. And we're not going to do these things for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks and then forget it. We're not going to be inconsistent. We're going to be very consistent, and the kids will adapt. The one fact of life, that no matter how old, people adapt to something new if they think it's going to last. So you just do it. That's all you need. Now, the second supplementary technique, once you've established truth and honesty in the questions, is, again, a fundamental value. The ability to do work is vital to adulthood. Underachievers have trouble with work. And getting work done is so important that if they don't become more and more like adults as they work, then not only will they have problems in school, but they're training themselves to fail in the future, which is why you're worried. So you just talk to them about that fundamental value. And you tell him the following thing. Work must be done. So if you have a 0, I'm not going to ground you for it. I'm not going to give you lectures. I'm just going to note it. So you just be honest with me. If you didn't turn something in, you tell me. And here's the deal. Based on that truth, you have to have all your work done by Friday. If you didn't do your work during the week, that's fine. That's your choice not to turn work in. But it still has to be done. See, when kids underachieve, they don't do homework, guess what? It's never required. It just disappears. They just get a 0 and it's gone. But we're going to require them to do it. And it has to be shown to you, and then they can go play on the weekends. Following scenario, they come home on Friday, they have 3 or 4 zeros they've told you about, they haven't done it yet, they can't do anything else. But as soon as they do it, they're free to go and do whatever they have to do or planned on doing. So that's how we set it up. And I'll tell you a little bit about this in a little bit more in a second. Kids will often construe that as a grounding in order to intimidate you, but it's not grounding. You're not saying if you don't have your work in, you can't go out this weekend. You're saying you get your work done, then you go. So if they have missing homework on Monday or Tuesday, you explain. If they want to do it Monday and Tuesday night, then it's done. It's out of the way. Now, if the kid says, but the teachers won't accept it, that's not the problem. You're training them to have fundamental values. If the teachers don't accept it, that's the teacher's responsibility. Your responsibility is to train them how to be an adult, how to grow up. So work must be done because it's an important value. And they need to learn the value of work. And that's why you're requiring it. That's simple. Now, the next technique is a supplementary technique you may wish to use, may wish to not use, depending on your style. But that learning is important. And if a child takes an exam and they make a D or below, they haven't learned that material very well, have they? So if learning is important and learning is a value, in fact it is a lifelong value, then what's necessary is for the child to learn that material. So you simply sit down with your child and say, you didn't learn it, so now you have to learn it. And I want you to schedule some time. You choose the time, meaning you, the child. Child, you choose the time that you're going to sit down and do this studying. And it could be an hour, half an hour, whatever seems reasonable. And usually I don't recommend more than an hour of supplementary studying to learn that same material. And that's it. He can schedule it on the weekend and do it in the week. He has to do it before Sunday ends. So the next week he's made up some work, made up studying. Now, those are supplementary, and some kids need that if they're going to get better, because they have to be in contact with the work. They have to kind of understand that there are some important values here, and even though you'll never be tested on that material again, the child says, I'll never be tested again, this is dumb. Don't worry about that. Go ahead and be dumb. It doesn't matter, because the values are important. As parents in this program, we want to make decisions based on values. Now, what about lying? What about the kid that comes home and says, oh, I've done my homework, and I don't have any zeros? And if they've done that to you in the past, you simply acknowledge it. And this is his chance or her chance to establish trust, but you don't quite have it yet. So what you're going to do, you let them know, what you're going to do is you're going to call the school, and you need 2 questions answered from the teachers. You know, teachers are very burdened. I don't like teachers to send home massive reports to you every week, because they won't do it for very long. All you need to know for this to work is, does Johnny have any missing grades that week only? I don't care about the 5 weeks before, because this is new. We're doing this now. This week only is there missing work. This week, are there any grades, say, below a D or below? All right? If he has missing work or low grades and you don't know about it, that means he lied. Or something happened that is akin to lying. Now, you tell your son or daughter, you tell your child that having missing work, that's an easy problem to solve, right? They just do it. If they have a low grade, that's a real easy problem to solve. They schedule a half an hour, sit down, study that material, and try to learn it. Those are easy problems. But breaking your trust is not an easy problem to solve. Because if he lies to you about school, that means you can no longer believe her words. You don't know what she means. So if she wants to go out for the weekend, or he wants to go out and spend the night with a friend, well, you're no longer sure that that's what he really is going to do. So you let him know that that's a bigger problem. And that means that if he starts lying, he may have to stay home and explain how, why, and the wherefores in depth, in detail, about the choice to lie. And that means he may be, heaven knows when he's going to reestablish trust. It could be 1 weekend, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, who knows. So you make sure in discussions about these supplementary disciplines what it means to lie. Now, what does it mean when a child comes home to you and says on Friday, oh, my heavens, I've left my books in the locker, the school's locked, I can't do the work I forgot to do, can I still go out because there's no way I can get it? Your response is, gee, I'm awfully sorry. You're kind of at the kitchen table all weekend then until you solve this problem of not having your work, because you knew in advance, right? He knew in advance. If he doesn't have his work, it's Friday, you explain this to him. Don't do this to yourself. You tell him, I want you to tell him, Johnny or Joanne, do not do this to yourself. Do not wait to the last minute, leave your work at school, and then ground yourself over the weekend because you don't have the work. As soon as you get your work done, you can go. It's your problem to solve. Now, some kids figure out by Saturday, if they call a friend and get books from friends, they can go ahead and do some of that work. Or if the work is in worksheets, there are occasions when parents have compromised and said, okay, if you can do an equivalent amount of work in history, and they make something up, but don't you solve the problem. We're training the child to solve problems. And there's been plenty of kids who sat down all weekend because they left their work at their school. And you can do a sequence analysis. How did you leave it? Did you remember to go by your locker? Well, most of the time they'll be thinking. At some point during the week they should get their work done, but they didn't. So let them stew. Now, what happens to kids' homework and study when you apply these techniques consistently? Most of the time, probably 80% of the kids who are underachieving will start getting their work done at least during the week, and most of them will start turning it in on time as well. Why? Because you have set up the conditions so the child has to admit, if he keeps missing work, he's got a really pretty serious problem here. He's completely irresponsible and he's choosing to fail. So these techniques alone begin to do the very things we want. The techniques work for you. Let them work for you. You set up the basic conditions and you go from there. And now we're ready for the 10-step program, because the 10 steps are what you use with the disciplines. Also, you can use the 10 steps by themselves, and so that the conditions eventually evolve where you need the supplementary disciplines. Okay, now let me just make a certain statement. When I say that kids are kind of stuck at the kitchen table all weekend, this is not a traditional grounding procedure, which often drives parents crazy because kids miss things they ought to be going to that's good for them. What this means is no free time. But if there are activities that kids do because it's good for them, like gymnastics or going to church or going to certain social functions, and you as a parent believe it's good for them to do this for whatever reason, they go. The issue is, if they don't do their work, they don't have free time, because now you control. It's who's going to be the boss routine. Sometimes you can use those words. Son, daughter, I want you to be your boss. You know you missed work. You know the way it's going to work. So if you don't have your homework, you be your boss, you get it done, you tell me. If you didn't, then this happens. And what you're saying to them is, if you can't be your boss, then I have to step in. But you're going to let the system work for you. The system steps in, so to speak, and sets up all the conditions. You're just so sad, so upset that they're not able to go out and have fun, because you just know going to that movie tonight was just so good after a hard day of studying in school and a hard week and all that good work they did and some of the work they didn't do. So as soon as they finish, you're just so happy for them to go. You're eager for them to experience a good social life and to have a joyful fun at the movie with their friends as soon as they finish their work. But Mom, it's at school. Oh, that's too bad. How would you solve that problem? How can you fix this? Well, I don't know. I don't know either. But sometimes, if why don't you just go to your room and think about it, and maybe you can come up with some solutions we can discuss. And that's how you handle their angst over not being able to be with their friends and get out of them blaming you because you're so eager for them to go. That's how it works. And if on Saturday they haven't figured out how to get that work done, and they need to go to their soccer game, they go to the soccer game. We don't want to cross punish. We don't want to take a youngster out of something that's good for them and they enjoy and healthy and it builds something just because they didn't do schoolwork. I want you to make value judgments as parents. Okay, now the 10-step program. I want you to first just listen as I enunciate these steps. I'm just going to tell you what they are. All I want you to do is listen. I want you to use your imagination as to what they would be like. If you read the book, just try to remember what these steps are. But just listen first. Step 1, set long-term goals. Step 2, get your youngster to state how those goals are going to be achieved. Step 3, find a significant problem and get your child's perspective. Step 4, link the problem you've been discussing to the outcome. Step 5, Narrow your focus down and make plans. Step 6. Redefine success and failure not as making the grades, but as following the plan. And then you analyze the decisions it'll take to follow those plans. Step 7. Initiate some introspection, discussing the conflicts and feelings your child has about the plans. Step 8. Cement a commitment from your child to actually follow through on those plans. Step 9. You follow through and find out in detail how your youngster either succeeded or failed in following plans. So when you do the sequence analysis at this step. And step 10, do this over and over and over and over and over again with each excuse and each problem your child presents until you've unhooked one excuse after another so often that now your child has no more excuses. Now let me discuss for a second what this is all about. And then we'll get into the steps and I'll give you some examples of how it works. If you follow these steps, what's going to happen is you're going to narrow your child's choices in life, in his school life. When he's confronted with all this, his excuses will slowly become unhooked. In other words, an excuse means I'm not responsible, so I have no anxiety, I don't have to worry about it, so I'm off the hook, I'm free. Well, when you do these 10 steps, he's not going to have that worry-free life anymore. He's going to feel more anxiety about his life and his schoolwork. Now, parents, that's good. If kids don't worry, they don't work. You're worried about your kids, so you've been doing all this work. Now you're going to transfer that worry where it belongs, in her skin or his skin, not just you. Second thing that's going to happen is that his choices will be narrowed. In other words, once he makes all these plans, he'll have several choices. One, he can actually follow the plan and get better. That's not the most popular choice, by the way, in the beginning. The second choice is he can try to substitute a new excuse. Now that's a popular plan, all right? The third choice is he can reveal his honest motivations. That's what we want. We want to narrow the range of choices. Most underachievers, the vast majority, are good kids, and they're going to start eventually getting better because doing well is going to become their idea, not ours.